I have so much to share with you today. So grab a drink, grab a project. We might be here a little while. Welcome to episode 28 of the Knitted by Whitney podcast. It has been quite a while since my last podcast episode, and I think when I recorded it, it was early September, and we're now almost halfway through November. But you haven't really noticed much of a lack of me being here on YouTube because over October, I released my Stash Tour series. This was a series of 5 videos that I made to commemorate reaching 5,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Thank you so much again for all of your love and support. I'm so grateful to have you all here in my cozy little corner of the internet. And since I reached 5,000 subscribers, I have grown even more. I think I'm either almost at or just hit 5,700 subscribers. So since I reached that 5,000, which was only a couple months ago, I have now gained another 700 of you. Welcome so much. I'm so glad you're here. And I did the Stash Tour series over the month of October to really give back to those of you who have been with me, because I asked what you wanted to see for a celebratory video for reaching 5,000, and you all voted for, most of you voted for a Stash Tour series. And you voted for a Stash Tour video, actually, and I had to turn it into a series because I had so much yarn to share and I could not get it all into one video. Believe me, I tried, and it was a mess, both literally and figuratively. So I divided my stash into 5 episodes, and they're now all in a playlist here on my channel, which you can go watch if you would like to, if you haven't watched them yet. I know a couple of people were waiting until all of the videos were out in order to binge them all straight to the end, so thank you so much. They're now all out there for you, and you can watch them all in a playlist so you don't have to keep clicking around to see the other videos. So because it's been a long time since I last podcasted, I have so much to share with you today, including 3 finished objects. And if you looked at the thumbnail for this video, you might know that one of them is not knitting. I have 4 works in progress, a number of special yarns to share with you in my Stash Spotlight, not nearly as many that are in my Stash Tour series though, and 2 book reviews. So this might be a fairly long podcast episode, so I hope you have a yummy drink. If you are wanting to work on a project while you watch this, I hope you have that with you, because this might take a while. Let's start by sharing my finished objects, which include the 2 items I am wearing. Yes, if you're eagle-eyed, you will have noticed that I am wearing 2 knitted items today. The first is, of course, my romance cardigan by Tricot Design MCL, also known as Marie-Christine Levesque, who is one of my favorite designers. She's based in New Brunswick, Canada, which is really close to me here in Nova Scotia, Canada. And I have knit this pattern before. This is my 3rd time knitting this pattern. I first knitted it for my wedding for myself and my maid of honor. I made mine very cropped with balloon sleeves, similar style for my maid of honor. And as much as I love that cardigan, it's incredibly special to me. I'm going to keep that cardigan for a very, very, very long time. I don't get a lot of day-to-day wear out of it because I made it specifically to go with my wedding dress, so it doesn't really work very well with the rest of my clothes. I find that it's just very, very fancy with the big balloon sleeves and the scalloped edge, and it is just far too short to wear with my regular clothes. I even tried to put it with some dresses in the summer, and I just didn't like the feel of the cardigan with my other items, with my skirts and dresses. I just didn't feel that it worked for me, so I knew I wanted to make a more everyday version, which is what this one is. This one was knit using some stash yarn. It is a discontinued yarn. It was Loops and Threads Poppy in the color light blue, I think. It is no longer available. I purchased it from Michael's originally. It's an acrylic yarn, but it's a lovely, lovely yarn. It's incredibly soft, but it is not breathable because I finished this cardigan in late September, mid to late September. And even when I took my finished object photos, which I'll include a few here because it's kind of hard for me to show you the whole piece on the video right now, I was sweating while I was taking those pictures. So it's really not one that I can wear if the weather is humid or if the weather is going to be at all warm. So this one is going to get a lot of wear this winter, unless I'm sweating under a puffy coat, which we wear a lot of puffy coats here in the winter in Nova Scotia. But I do absolutely love this sweater. I'm so happy that I made it. I'll hold my buttons up a little closer so you can see my beautiful buttons. They're just these plastic rose buttons. I think they're some sort of like pearlescent plastic. I love them so much. They go so well with the cardigan. And I really feel that the off-white or white buttons really make this look like a neutral color. It is technically a blue, but it's a very, very, very pale blue. And in my eyes, if you're not looking too closely at it, it is almost like a very pale gray. And I want to wear this cardigan as a neutral. So I love that those buttons really kind of make you believe that this is a neutral color, not a pale blue. It is looking kind of blue on the video, but it's okay. Blue's one of my favorite colors. And this is one of my best fitting sweaters that I have ever made. This time around, I knitted size extra large. For my wedding version, I knit 2XL and it was perfect. It gave me exactly the amount of positive ease that I wanted. But with my everyday version, with the way that I wear cardigans, I wanted neutral ease. Even if I had a little bit of negative ease in the body, that was okay. I have a lot of cardigans that are too small for me, so I'm actually kind of used to wearing cardigans with negative ease. It's not ideal. I would like them to fit a bit better, but it's okay if they are quite fitted. So I have this open right now because I'm going to show you what I have on underneath it in just a second, but even buttoned up, it buttons perfectly. It is the perfect neutral eased cardigan of my dreams. I absolutely love, 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 love the fit of this sweater. Marie Christine is one of my absolute favorite designers for fit. I am just in awe of how well her patterns fit a variety of sizes. For myself, for my wedding cardigan, I made a 2XL. For my best friend, I made a medium, and now I'm making an extra large for myself. Every single one has fit perfectly. And my favorite thing about them is the fit of the sleeves. So they are a set-in sleeve, which are made using short rows. So it fits so, so, so well on the arm, and it just comes down so nicely. I modified the sleeves in the pattern. There is not a tapered sleeve option. There is only the full balloon sleeve or a straight sleeve, and I did not want either of those options. I knew I wanted a tapered sleeve, so I just modified it myself. I have all the instructions in my Ravelry page about what I did to get these tapered sleeves, and if I'm being honest, I don't remember them off the top of my head, so I don't want to say the wrong thing. But if you are not able to use Ravelry, just leave me a comment below or shoot me a message on Instagram, and I will very gladly give you those instructions via another way if you cannot use Ravelry. So the last time I showed this in the podcast, I really only needed to do, I think, another inch or two on the bottom, and then the ribbing and the button band. And I was running out of yarn, and I was a little scared. I was playing yarn chicken. I lost. I lost because I just did not have enough for the bind off. Literally, just the bind off on the button band was the only bit that I did not have enough yarn for. I was this close. So what I ended up doing is I raided my stash for anything that looked remarkably similar. I wasn't even caring about yarn weight or fiber, anything like that. I just wanted whatever was the most similar. And I ended up pairing together some white merino fingering with a strand of pale blue Surrey alpaca, and it's invisible. You can't even tell that there is a different yarn for just the bind off. It is so incredibly hard to tell. So, underneath my cardigan, I have my second finished object, which I literally just bound off last night and steam blocked this morning. I'm so happy to be finished this one because this is my last tank top that I was working on in the summer, and this is the 03 Rib Cami by Eleanor Alice Knits. Talk about a perfectly fitting pattern. I love Marie Christine Levesque's designs for fit, and Eleanor is right up there with her. This tank top, which I'm going to put a photo because it's kind of hard to show you my whole body, it fits immaculately, and that's not just because it's a ribbed pattern and it is formed to my body. It's because of the instructions in the pattern. So this pattern has wonderful shaping. It takes into account your upper bust measurement, your full bust measurement, your under bust measurement, your waist measurement. So many different measurements. It is a little overwhelming when you look at the pattern for the first time because it's quite an extensive pattern. I think it was almost 20 pages. But all you need to do is just go through meticulously, highlight the things that you need to highlight, write in the things that you need to write in, record your measurements, do those very, very, very minor calculations that you need to do to figure out which instructions to do, and then just tackle it piece by piece. The biggest thing that I can recommend for this pattern is to have multiple colored highlighters that match the color of the markers that you're supposed to use in the pattern. And if possible, get markers that are that color. So for example, this pattern used 4 markers. There was a pink marker, a green marker, a blue, and a yellow. So I highly recommend having those 4 colors for a highlighter and for the markers that you're going to use, because that will make it so easy to go through those instructions and recognize where you're supposed to do which elements of the piece. Now, you're not using all of those markers all at the same time. In fact, you don't start with any markers, otherwise, except to show front and back, because it is ribbing, and unless you are looking at this center rib column here, if this is knit, it's the front. If it's purl, it's the back. But I remember when I showed this off in another podcast episode, I actually was showing it inside out because I wasn't quite paying attention to what was the front and what was the back. But I love this pattern so, so much. And I do want to point out that this pattern was very kindly gifted to me by one of my followers. Thank you so very much for that. I really appreciate it. And now you can see how well it fits on me. And I love this pattern so much. I chose to do the optional bust shaping and waist shaping. So in this pattern, you could just knit it straight and not make any adjustments whatsoever, especially if you have a very straight torso. You don't have big differences between your bust and your waist and your hip measurements. If you are more of a straight person, then you don't need to do any of these things whatsoever. But I love that Eleanor included 3 different sets of customized bust and waist shaping. So there are options for if you have, it's dependent on the difference in measurement from your full bust to your waist. And I think I did the second option. So I didn't need the largest option. I was able to go with the medium section. But the fit is just so good and it just hugs me in all the right places. I'm very happy with the length that I chose, which I will have to measure and write into my Ravelry notes because I didn't write that down yet because I was just so excited to finish it last night. I didn't really have a particular length in mind. I was just trying it on every so often. It was fitting very well for my high-waisted skirts and high-waisted pants pretty early. But I wanted to give myself the option to wear this with jeans if I so chose to. So I just kept trying it on with my jeans until I felt, okay, yeah, it overlaps enough that I'm comfortable with that, and I would wear it like that. So for this pattern, I chose to knit size 7. That worked best for my bust measurement. And the last time I checked, I should have mentioned this earlier when I was talking about the cardigan, I believe my current bust measurement is 53 inches. I do try and keep my measurements up to date on my Ravelry profile, so if you're ever looking at any of the patterns that I've made and you want to see how it may correlate with your size, I do have some of my measurements listed on Ravelry in my profile specifically. So I knit this using 2 strands of Hedgehog Fibers sock yarn in the color Hush. And if this color looks familiar, it's because this is the same yarn, same color actually, that I used for my Lento sweater, and I used it in mohair for that pattern along with my fading purple minis that I used from various advent calendars that I had. But this is the color on sock, and I adore this color. I think it's one of the most magical colors in the world. And I learned this morning it's even more magical because there's a color changing element to it. When I was steaming it, it changed from a pinky purple to a bluey purple whenever my steamer went over it. So something in this dye recipe is heat reactive, and I think that's so cool. I don't think it would be heat reactive in the sense that, like, if you're just wearing it and you're sweating, the armpits would get darker. I don't think it would do that. I think it's more so if a lot of heat is applied to it. But it was just such an incredible thing to see as I'm steaming my piece, trying to like even out the stitches. I do not intend to wet block this piece because if I ever need to wash it, it's a superwash yarn, it's going in the washer and it's going in the dryer. I know, sounds a little scary to some people, but that's what this yarn is meant to do, and I find that it works best when it does that. So that's how I'm going to wash it. So that's why I didn't want to wet block it, because I knew that would stretch it out of place and I didn't want to lay it flat and try and smoosh it back together. So I just steam blocked it. I just have one more thing I want to mention before I move on, but I ended up doing one modification for this pattern, and that is the straps. So I guess you could say technically it was 2 modifications because it's 2 straps, but I was so nervous to pick up these straps and work on them, and I really feel like it kind of stalled me on this project because I was just too worried about starting the straps. I picked up other projects instead that were more mindless, and I didn't have to really think about how to go about them, because I knew from looking at examples of this on Ravelry, I wasn't really a fan of the wider straps that you made simply just by picking up your provisional cast on from where you started. And I knew I wanted to change them, but I didn't really have the mindset to work on them until last week. Monday night, Tuesday night, I forget which one, all of a sudden I just had the urge to work on it, and I had the brain power to figure out what I wanted to do, and I just went about it. So I ended up decreasing by 2 stitches. So my straps are 2 stitches smaller than the pattern recommends. And I didn't do double knit straps. I did ribbed straps instead. And the reason that I did that is because I didn't want to do double knit. Double knit to me is a lot of work, and I didn't really want the extra thickness of those straps. And I knew I could get a very similar look by doing ribbed straps. So when they are being pulled taut, which they are right now, you can't even tell that these are ribbed. They actually kind of look like they're double knit, or they look like they're stockinette. But when you pull them apart, you can tell that they are in fact ribbed straps. And I learned that from, I think it's in a Knititude pattern. That's where I first saw that as an option for straps. And I kept that in the back of my mind, knowing that I could pull that out of my pocket. Because you don't want to do stockinette straps because they'll just curl inwards. I knew I didn't want I-cord straps. They would be very bulky and they wouldn't cover my bra strap, which is wider than an I-cord. So I had to figure something out, and this was what I landed on. And going down those 2 stitches, plus the rib being pulled tight and scooching in, it makes the perfect width strap to cover my bra strap without being a very wide, cumbersome strap. I find because of my shoulders, which are very sloped shoulders, if I have wide straps, it really emphasizes how sloped my shoulders are, and it makes me feel uncomfortable with how that garment fits me. So I chose to do these thinner straps, and I'm so happy with them. It was a bit of a trial to figure out where to attach them in the back, and I ended up making my straps 10 inches long. That was the perfect length for me because, as you can see, my V is a nice sexy V without being too low, and it's hard to move a bit, but I can kind of see there. I think that's a bit better. Sorry for all the grunting and moaning. Life in your 30s. So I made my straps about 10 inches long, and where I secured them, they mostly cover my bra. So as you'll remember from my Pillars tee or my Pillars tank scenario, I wasn't getting the coverage that I needed, and this one does give me coverage. Not perfect coverage, but I wouldn't want it to go any higher because then that would look a little awkward. But where I sewed down the straps, it was a little tricky to figure that out. And after I did it the first time and tried it on, I wasn't happy with where it was sitting, so I just moved it over a little bit and it still wasn't right. But when I tried it on again this morning to put it on for recording, it just lined up perfectly. And so as much of my bra that can be covered is covered, and I'm happy with that. My last finished object is not knitting at all. It's sewing! So if you were around for my fall plans video, you'll know that I wanted to sew a Howl jacket. So if this doesn't look familiar to you, this is a jacket based on the character of Wizard Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. It is a Studio Ghibli film. It's my absolute favorite Studio Ghibli film, but it is originally based on a book by Diana Wynne Jones, which I read growing up and is still one of my favorite books. But I sewed this to wear to our local Comic-Con event, and I will include a photo here of my outfit. I am so pleased with how it turned out. We actually just went to the convention this weekend. I'm recording this on Monday, and it was exhausting, but it was really fun, and a lot of people knew what my cosplay was. I saw a lot of other people that were dressed up in similar costumes. I only saw 1 or 2 other handmade ones. The other ones were all store-bought, but I had to hand make mine because my size is not available in a store-bought costume. I could have bought it from an Etsy seller who would have made it to my measurements, but those were incredibly expensive and far out of my budget. But they need to charge those amounts of money because they are absolutely beautiful handmade garments. I'm not negating the price, I'm just saying I could not afford the price. So I decided to make mine. I am a beginner sewer, but I'm incredibly pleased with this because this is more of an intermediate, possibly advanced pattern. I'm going to say it's more just intermediate, but sometimes it felt like it was advanced because of how hard it was. Because I had to make this diamond pattern fabric myself. This is not a printed fabric. This is sewn together, and I did my absolute best, but some of them are not quite lined up. Maybe it's on this side. You can see it better. Oh yeah. See, these ones in particular are not on point to point. It's really big, so it's kind of hard to hold it up. Sorry. But I am incredibly proud of this, and I'm so pleased with how well it turned out. It fits me really nicely. It is an oversized jacket. The sleeves are a little too long, but that's kind of the purpose of this jacket. I did have to modify the pattern. I will, of course, link that below. I bought it off of Etsy from a seller named Merida, I think it was. I hope I got that correctly. But I will link that below if you're also interested in this pattern. I did have to modify it a bit. So my biggest modification is that I cut about 8 inches off of the length. I did a mock-up first, thank goodness, and I realized that I needed to fix a few of the fit issues, one of which was the length, the other of which was the shoulders. The shoulders were way too wide, so of course the shoulder seam comes off of my shoulder. Let me try it on so you can see. Here we go. And I just fold down the collar a bit like that. So here's my jacket. So my shoulder seam right now is maybe only an inch off of my true shoulder, which is perfect for an oversized jacket. My original mock-up, the shoulder seam was coming down to about here, and it really made the sleeves go way too long. Right now they fit kind of like this. They definitely go over my hand, and I think only my longest fingers stick out. But I made those couple of modifications and it's perfect. So I did have to do a little bit of like guesswork to try and match up the pattern a bit, but it ended up working great. And it was forgiving because it is an oversized jacket. It's not like I was making a very fitted dress or a very fitted bodice for something. So I was okay making those calculated risks. And I not only made this diamond fabric myself, I fully lined my jacket, and this is a term called bagging out, which means that you sew everything with the right sides facing and then you pull it out through one little section and then you have to hand sew that section. That was this entire neck from here all the way across to here. It is all hand sewn, and I hate hand sewing, and it took me so long, but I have to thank Chelsea of Knitting Tipsy and the Magical Make-Along that she hosted over in Ko-fi for helping me get through that, because I finished that up during our wrap-up party. So I didn't actually fully finish my project during that timeline, but I didn't expect to. I ended up finishing it the next day because once I bagged it out and hand sewed that collar, that neckline, I still had to do my finishing on the sleeves and on the hem, and I had to put this beautiful gold bias binding all around the edges to really make it look fancy. So this is not a perfect garment, but I am incredibly happy with it. There's just a few things that I would have done differently. So I wanted to add some gold detailing along the seams of the diamonds. I had a textured gold fabric. I think it was just like a ribbon or something like that, but it was textured, and I did it on one whole front, and I got halfway through doing the other front and I ran out. And I was so devastated because I only had, I think, 5 days before the convention, so I definitely did not have enough time to order the exact same one that I had already ordered, because I purchased all of my fabrics and my detailing pieces from AliExpress. And AliExpress is not very quick. I also know it is not the most ethical choice, but I was able to buy fabrics at a much more affordable price for myself. They are also not perfect. I would have liked a different pink, but this was the best that I could find, and it is the choice I made in order to make this cosplay accessible for me, but I do recognize that it is not a very ethical choice. But I was not able to order that same gold edging, so I looked at some on Amazon, and I did find one that looked like it was the exact same, but when it arrived, it was not. The one that I had already was more of a neutral gold, almost a cool tone gold. The one that arrived was a very warm, very orangey yellow gold, and I despised it. I didn't even like it enough to redo the whole thing in that new trim, because I did buy enough trim to be able to do the whole thing just in case it didn't match, but I still wanted to do the trim, and I couldn't. It was just so awful. So I spent 2 days agonizing over what do I do? Do I try and find another gold trim? Do I try and use part of this trim? Do I only use this trim that I really don't like? I was so torn. And one of my friends, who was actually my cosplay partner, she cosplayed as Calcifer, she said, if you don't like it now and you're not going to like it later, don't do it. So I took her advice to heart, and knowing that doing that gold trim in the gold color that I do not like would just make me unhappy in the long run as well, I thought, I'm just going to leave it off. Because it really was an added bonus. It's not on the jacket that's in the movie, but it was an inspiration that I had seen in another cosplayer's version of this jacket, and it really elevated it to me, and it made it look very fancy, like Howl himself would be. So I ended up going without it. I really would have preferred to have it, but I only had a couple of days before the con. I had to make choices to enable me to have a finished cosplay. So I ended up leaving it off, and I'm totally fine with that. I really do like it. I just think I would have liked it more if I was able to do that gold trim that I liked. I also had a horrible time doing this gold edging, because not only do I have the red fabric sandwiched together with the pink or the blue fabric, there are also sections where the diamonds are meeting on the edge. So there's technically 3, if not 4 layers of fabric right there. And I'm trying to sandwich them together and use this teeny weeny little bias binding. And this bias binding was so hard to use because it was a rubber, almost lame material. And I did not know that when I ordered it. It just looked like it was gold and metallic online. So every time my sewing needle would go into it and come back up, it would come up a little gummy, especially if it was struggling to get through multiple layers. So instead of being able to go over this edging once and be done with it, I had to go over it multiple times. And I was not able to fold in the corners and just keep going with that one piece of binding. So all of my corners have cut pieces of the binding. Let me take this off to show you. So I know that it's not very sturdy in the long run, but it is what I had to do. So you can see here that it ends right there, and then this is a separate piece, and then this is a separate piece, and that's a separate piece. I really feel like I did the collar quite well because I was able to cut them on an angle. But this piece didn't work out as well. And I think I sewed this down one side twice, the other side 3, if not 4 times, because after I would do the whole thing, feeling it, I felt that I had done it well. And then I went to try it on and realized, oh, the binding is coming right off. There's a space right there where it didn't get attached. So I'd have to redo it again. So I do have a number of threads that are coming off in the center of the binding rather than just on either end. But it's okay. It's done, and it was phenomenal. I was so happy with it. It looked really great. I'm very proud that I was able to do some advanced skills that I didn't yet know how to do, but that I was kind of forced to do in order to do this cosplay, such as the lining and bagging it out. I can show you my beautiful hand stitching. Look how neat that is. I'm very proud of that because I am a terrible hand sewer. But what I would have done differently is that for the sleeves, they didn't have you sew the right sides of the good fabric and the lining fabric together when you were bagging it out. You only did that for the body of it. You didn't do it for the sleeves. I really wish I had done it for the sleeves because I find that they fit a little odd. It's just that the lining is tighter than the outer fabric. So it kind of makes the outer fabric kind of like crumple a bit. It's more obvious on one than the other. Maybe it's this one. Oh, yeah, it is this one. So you can see how this is not laying flat. This is kind of crumpled up. And that's because that lining is tighter than the outer fabric. And even when I pull it, it doesn't go down any more than that. So it's always going to be crumply right here. It's not the end of the world. This is a really impressive jacket to have made, especially because I've never made a jacket before. I've never sewn a jacket. I've never done diamond harlequin fabric before. I have never done a fully lined jacket. I have never done binding over so many layers of fabric. I've never used these types of materials before. This is like a satin This is a brocade. This is some sort of rubber lame. Like, I don't even know what it is. But I really need to give myself credit for the fact that this was a really difficult project to do. And I have something to show for it. And not only do I have something to show for it, I have something beautiful to show for it. And I'm so proud of this. I'm so proud of this. I've been recording for almost 40 minutes and I have only gotten through my finished objects. So let's try and go a little quicker through the whips. The first one that I want to show off is in a new bag that I got this weekend. I got this at HowlCon. It's hilarious. And this is actually officially licensed by Sarah J. Maas. The maker behind this bag told me that when I bought it from her, because she had just received news that she had gotten officially licensed before the convention started. But I love this bag. I'm so happy with it. But in here I have my Arcuate vest, which doesn't look a lot different than the last time I showed it. But I have put it on an extra cord so that I can really pull it out to show you, because I feel like it's kind of hard to show how nice the cables are when it's all squished up. This is a pattern by Charissa, and I am testing this pattern for her, even though the pattern is already out. It's been out for a year or so, but I am testing it for her because some of the upper sizes did not get tested, and she kindly gifted me the pattern in exchange for feedback. So I am knitting size 6, and this one is so lovely. It is bottom up, but I'm totally okay with it. I showed it off in a reel recently, and I think in the reel I did say that I could have gone down a size. I probably still could, but I realized when I said that in the reel, I'm trying it on over my belly because it's bottom up and that's kind of where it's going to start. But I chose the size based on my bust measurement. So, and there's no shaping to it. It's just one measurement all the way up. Of course, it's going to fit larger on my belly because it's meant to fit my bust. So I think once I have more of the pattern done, I'm really going to be able to tell that it is a really good fit for me, especially based on the size that I chose. But I am keeping it in the back of my mind that maybe I should have chosen a different size, but based on what the measurements for each size were, based on the intended ease, I met gauge perfectly, it should all be fine. But I really want to show off these cables because I'm the type of person that I love a good cable, but I don't quite love repetitive cables that look exactly the same all up and down a piece. I find that visually that doesn't interest me all that much. I love an all-over cable work pattern, especially one that has all kinds of different cables that are moving in so many different ways. I just find that so visually interesting and so, oh my gosh, I just love them. They're one of the things that I just really lust after as a knitter. But I hate knitting them because they are so much work, because you have to constantly be looking at a chart. You have to constantly have your brain on. You don't really get a chance to relax with those kind of patterns. And I really find that the Arcuate vest is the best of both worlds because yes, they are the same cables, but you are switching up the frequency of them so you get something that is more visually interesting. So I'll hold it up here and you can really tell it starts off, some of the cables are frequent, some of them are less frequent, so they look like big and small cables, but you're doing the exact same cable motion whenever you have a cable row. You're just switching up where you do them and how often you do them. So it's a really great blend of having an easy to memorize cable work pattern that looks so visually interesting. And I'm really loving working on this. A little over 2 inches left to go until I can do something different than just the cables in the round all the way up. So I think I start doing arm splitting, and then there's a V-neck to this pattern, so I might be doing the V soon. So I'm getting very, very close to that, and I really would like to get that done, or at least get to that point in the pattern soon, because I really feel like that's going to speed up the rest of the pattern. Once I'm knitting it flat and I'm knitting those pieces, the front left, front right, back piece. I feel like it's going to go so much faster once I get to that point, and I'm really excited to get to wear this soon. I would have loved to have finished it earlier this fall so that I could have taken photos, because this color to me is the most beautiful brown leaf color, and I would have gotten some beautiful photos, but I just didn't have the time to do it. We had an incredibly busy September and October, so this one might be finished I'm hoping by the end of the year. I really would like to get this done in order to give Sharissa some feedback before the end of the year. So that's my goal with this one. Part of the reason why I haven't made a ton of progress on my vest is that I've been working on a lot of whips lately. So until today, or until last night really, I had 5 whips going, but I managed to finish this last night, so now I'm down to 4 active ones. But one of the other ones that I have been active on is another one that I've been working on for quite a while. In fact, you have seen this done even more than I am about to show you, because I had to frog this and start again. I have picked back up my husband's Gigi Cardi by Knititude, and this is a pattern that I started for him back in January as part of a collaboration with Hobie. I did a marketing campaign for them for this yarn. So I did not pay for this yarn. This was gifted to me by Hobie. This is their upcycled alpaca blend. But I had knit the entire body of the cardigan. I'd even put on the buttons and everything. And I had my husband try it on, and it was so clear that it was too big. And the biggest problem for me was not just that it was too big, it's that the openness of the yarn was too big. It was just, the gauge was so loose, even though it was the proper gauge of the pattern. So instead of just choosing to go down a size in the pattern, I didn't really want to do that, because the sizes of this pattern are separated by about 4 inches. And my husband really does not like anything that's too snug. So I didn't want to go down a full size. And I knew I didn't like that openness of the gauge of the fabric of the yarn. So instead, all I did was I went down a needle size, and I am so happy with that decision. I'm also going to make some fitting changes too. So I'm going to make the cardigan shorter, and I'm going to have less space between each of the buttons so that it will look more intentional with the shorter length. But so far I just have the yoke, which I can probably pop on. It's going to look a little silly though, because I haven't done any splits yet. So right now it just looks like a nice shrug. Let's see if I can get the stitches all the way to the end and hopefully spread this out a bit so you can see it better. I'm bigger than my husband, but it's close enough that you can see it. So I've done the initial set of raglan increases. I still have one more set to do, and that's also where you start to narrow down this fold over collar. It's not this wide the whole way down. So I'm going to start doing that next. That'll be the next order of business, and then hopefully I'll be able to split for the sleeves and the body. And I am going to do the body before the sleeves, same as what I did the first time I knit this pattern, so that I can make sure the body fits really nicely before I take on those sleeves. And the sleeves will fly by afterwards, so I'm not too concerned about that. But I'm much happier with this revamped version, and I picked this one up the week before last. So before I picked up my 03 rib cami to finish it, I had picked up this pattern, and I knit it consistently for a week, and I got through those yoke increases so quickly. Then I put it back down because I had finished the part that I had memorized. I then needed to look back at the pattern and figure it out again. And I just haven't done that yet. But I am knitting size, I think it's either large or extra large, but it is the 48-inch chest. So that is the one that I'm making for him. And I think it'll fit him really, really nicely. The original one did fit really nicely when it was just at the yoke, but as I knit more of it, the weight of the yarn pulled it down, and the open gauge made it less structured. So I think this is going to fit him incredibly well. This is another project that I have told him I would love to get done by the end of the year, so that I don't have to carry this forward another year, but I can't get everything done by the end of the year. And of my projects, I have 2 more whips to show you. One of those I also want to get done by the end of the year. Speaking of that other project I want to get done by the end of the year, my Lento sweater, which, funny enough, I've got so much done on this sweater, and this is the first time you're seeing it on the podcast, but I did talk about it in my fall knitting plans video. So this is a new cast on compared to my last podcast episode, and I am knitting this out of some yarn that was so kindly gifted to me by Fleece Artist Handmaiden, who are a local Nova Scotia hand-dyed yarn company. They are one of my favorite yarn dyers, and they very kindly gifted me this yarn. I was able to pick the base that I wanted and the color that I wanted, and there is a link in the description box below if you would also like this yarn, because it is incredible. It is so soft and squishy. The color is just incredible. This is their Handmaiden Whisker base, and the color is Raspberry Cordial. And if you know anything about Canadian literature, you'll know that Raspberry Cordial is the drink that Anne from Anne of Green Gables and her friend Diana get sick from because they drink so much of it in the book Anne of Green Gables. I'm actually not an Anne of Green Gables fan, but I just adored the color. I even have a skirt that is the same color as this yarn that I wore when I took some progress photos of this, and I have a wide cord on it. I'm going to try it on to show you too. It messes up my hair a bit, but that's okay. I absolutely love this pattern. Ugh. This is one of my favorite patterns ever. I love the open gauge, which is typically made using one strand of figuring and one strand of mohair, but I have done it with this one strand of this fuzzy yarn, which I don't think it has an exact like size, but it does have gauge on it. It is 20 stitches per 4 inches when knit with a 4mm US 6 needle. The balls are 50 grams and 217 yards. And here is the little card. Take my finger off of the Raspberry Cordial. And this is all I have left of my second ball. Once I finish this, I'm going to pick up the sleeves and get the sleeves knitted, and then I will go back and do the body. But I love this yarn and this pattern. The combo is incredible. There is a slight difference from about here between the two colors. I'm far too lazy to do helical knitting or alternating skeins or anything like that. I'm okay with it. It does not bother me, but for some people it might bother them. So in that case, I would recommend doing helical knitting or finding another way to alternate your skeins. But I'm totally fine with this. This doesn't bother me at all. But I have made a few modifications to this pattern, because this is not the first time I've made this pattern. It's the second, and it will not be the last by any stretch. I have done different increases than the pattern suggests. There are a lot of increase options that you can do for raglan sweaters. This one uses knit one front and back, which I think is really beginner friendly, but it's not the best looking. A lot of people prefer to do make one lefts and make one rights in order to get very symmetrical looking raglan lines, which I do enjoy that. I think that's a great thing, but sometimes I just don't want to faff about and try and do make one lefts and make one rights. I find that picking up that stitch in between and remembering which way to knit into it, sometimes I just don't want to do the mental work to do that in order to like stop and think every time I do a raglan increase. So I do a backwards loop cast on stitch. And I learned this from This Is Knit, who are a yarn store based in Dublin, Ireland. They're going to come up again in this video, don't you worry. But they did all these great what I wish I knew before I first started knitting videos. I don't think they do them anymore. What I've seen right now is that they're repeating some of their older ones and bringing them back up. And one of the ones that they did that I had never known before and was so excited to learn, even as someone who's been knitting for almost 10 years, is that when you're doing raglan increases and you need to do make one lefts and make one rights, you can literally substitute in a backwards loop cast on stitch to mimic either of those stitches. And it looks exactly the same unless you're looking super, super close. And as you can tell, looking at my very lovely symmetrical raglan stitch, you can't even tell that I have done a different way of increasing my stitches. And I just think it looks so clean. I ended up leaving 2 stitches in between, but you could easily have done it with just 1 stitch in between. For me, it just worked better to have the 2 stitches, just for ability to remember and everything, and for symmetry. But I love that tip. I think it's such a great tip. And we're so used to doing the backwards loop cast on for adding stitches under the arm. Why not do it on the raglan as well? So that's what I ended up doing. This looks like it's not fitting my arms too well, but that's just because the cords are really small and my upper arms are quite big, but this does fit me incredibly well. I am knitting size 6, and the last time I made this pattern, I knit size 5, and I did that simply because I was very limited with the amount of yarn that I have, and I have since realized that a 6 would fit me much better because my size 5 is really quite snug on the upper arms. I have blocked it bigger, but it has stretched out quite a bit under the arm, and I didn't want that to happen to this one, so I chose to go with size 6 for this one, and I find that it's a better fit for me, and I did the folded collar. I did it differently than the pattern suggested, simply because I've only done a folded collar once before, and I wanted to follow that same way of doing it because that felt very comforting to me, and this was entirely meant to be a comforting project. It was to help me get through our busy fall. We had so much going on. I just wanted something that was going to be easy, something I didn't have to think too hard about, and that meant that I didn't want to start with the collar and then do the join and then move on to the body. I wanted to knit the body first, then go back and do the collar, and then move on. So what I ended up doing is picking up my stitches, knitting them using the same recommended needle and recommended number of stitches as the pattern indicated that you should have cast it on with, knitting it until it was, I think, 3 to 4 inches. I don't quite remember. And then I just folded it down. I just knitted it until when I folded it over, I liked that height. So I think this ends up being like, I think it's 1.25 inches maybe. But it's just slightly more than 1 inch, and it just sits so nicely. I really love how it sits. And this yarn is not itchy at all. It's incredible. It's a mixture of mohair, wool, and nylon. And honestly, I have it right next to my skin because this is my tank top underneath. Not a single bit of itch. It's so cozy. If you're sensitive to mohair, it might not be the best for you right on your sensitive skin of your chest or your neck or something. I've never been sensitive to mohair unless it's bad mohair. Well, not bad, but like there's certain mohairs that I find that I really don't like them. They're very itchy to me. The only one that I can think of right now is Debbie Bliss mohair. I used that for one pattern and I could not wear the piece. It was so uncomfortable, so itchy. But I don't mind this being right next to my skin. But yeah, that's what I did for the neck. I was very, very happy with that. I think it sits so nicely, and I'm really excited to keep going with this pattern. I just have other patterns I'm also working on, and I kind of want to put this aside to make some more progress on my husband's sweater and my arcuate vest, but I would really love to get this done for Christmas. I have no worries about getting it done in that timeline because this is such a quick knit. It's knit on large needles. It's a large gauge. I have 3 balls left to use. I've used 2. I'm sitting pretty. It'll be no problem. My last whip has so many strings coming off of it, it might as well be a marionette. But this, which I am going to hold up better in a second, I'm just trying to make sure I don't get too tangled, is my Souffle by Laura Penrose. I am knitting size 7, which is the same size that I have made for both of my short sleeve versions, but this is going to be my first ever long sleeve version. And I am in the middle of doing the ruffle, which is really, really lovely. It's beautiful, but it's a lot of work. But I think I can slip it on. It's also at a precarious point because I only have, I think, 1 row knitted of the underarm, so it's gonna look a little strange because of that, because there's really only 1 row, so it's right underneath my armpits. I did not take a long enough cord to really stretch this out, so it also looks a little bunched up. And of course the cord for the ruffle is still in place, and that's kind of changing the fit of it a bit. So it does look a little puffy and potato sacky, but it is going to fit a lot better because this is going to stretch out more. It's going to come down to about here probably, and I'm going to have my ruffle right across the top, and it's going to fit much better on the body because I won't have a cord that's too small. But I'm so happy with this pattern. I'm in the throes of doing the ruffle, which takes a few days in my past experience of knitting this pattern, and it is a lot of work to make, but it is so worth it. It looks so pretty when it's done, and to me the ruffle is worth it. It just takes a long time because of the number of stitches that you have to do and the increases and everything. Like it's a lot. So it's really not something you can do in a single sitting. It's not something you could do one row at a time in a single sitting. It really takes a lot of dedication to do it. So I always recommend, if someone is telling me they want to make this pattern, is as soon as you have your body split, go back and do your ruffle. Right away, don't wait around, do your ruffle, because you really don't want to leave that to the end because it takes so much time, and you really don't want to be close to the end of the pattern. You are feeling so excited to get it all done, and you have this one thing left to do, and you think, oh, it's not going to take very long. I'm going to be able to wear this really soon. And then you sit down and do it, and you realize, oh my gosh, this takes so long. Do it when you only have part of the pattern done and you still have a lot more of the pattern to do, so that you can boost yourself onwards knowing that you have that ruffle done and you can get through the body and the sleeves faster, because the ruffle is not fast. It's very slow, but it's worth it. I also haven't done my I-cord neckline yet, but I have put a little stitch marker holding the two pieces together because it is a keyhole back, and I will have that come up just a bit more than the neck is now. So it's a little, it just fits so perfectly. I love this pattern. This is my third time making it, but it is actually my first time making it in mohair. I have mohair just for the sheer neck section, and this is a discontinued yarn. This is Sugarbush Yarns Drizzle in the color Puddle Pink, which sadly is discontinued, but it was a Canadian yarn, so that was quite lovely. I did get some Canadian yarn, and I did get this on sale when one of my favorite yarn stores sadly went out of business, but I was able to get some yarn on sale, and this is one of the yarns that I bought, and I held on to it because I originally was going to use this with another pink yarn for my antiquity blouse that I was making for my bridal shower, and I realized very quickly that pattern was not looking very good on me. It was not working out, so I put it aside, and I had a lot of this pink mohair. I also had some pink tencel yarn, which I have here in the bag, which I can show you. This is Trailhead Yarns. Their Cabot Trail, which is their tencel base. And this is in the color Unicorn Tears. And I wanted to use this yarn because I used the same yarn in a different color for my pale blue version, which I did short sleeved, which was the top that I wore for my bridal shower. However, that one I learned pretty quickly does not hold up its shape very well because tencel yarn does not have any memory whatsoever. It has beautiful drape, but no memory. So I knew when I wanted to make a long sleeve version, I am making this to replace a store-bought blouse that I have that doesn't quite fit me very well anymore, but that I love the color of, and style-wise it's very similar to the souffle. I wanted to make a hand-knit version of that blouse because I used to wear that all the time. I knew I had to hold something with the Trailhead yarns, and I found this Puddle Pink in my stash, put them together, did a little swatch. It was perfection. So I'm holding those together. I'm holding 2 strands of the Trailhead yarns with 1 strand of the Puddle Pink, and it's such a perfect color combo. Like, they really look so nice together. I knew I was a little short on the Puddle Pink, so I ended up ordering another ball of mohair from Knit Picks. I bought their Aloft, which is one of my favorite mohairs. It's definitely an underrated mohair, but it's not an exact match for the Puddle Pink. You can see that it's just a slight shade darker than the Puddle Pink. So instead of trying to work it in somewhere along here, I originally thought I might use this for the neck portion, but then I decided, no, I really would rather have the really pale pink against my neck. I'm going to be using this mohair for the ruffle. So if you take a close look, you can tell that the section of mohair that is just knit single along my chest is one color, the ruffle is another color, and then the body is a different color because this is mohair held single with a loose gauge, so more of my skin color comes through. This is mohair held with 2 strands of tencel, and then this is just mohair held single, but it is a slightly different color. But I find that it works so well as that division in between. So if I remember correctly from doing my short sleeve blue version, the ruffle takes exactly 100 yards. So this is 250 yards, I think. It's a 50 gram ball, or 25 gram ball maybe. 25 gram ball, yeah, they're really, really light. But this is about 250 yards, so I'll use 100 of that for the ruffle. And then if I'm running low on my Puddle Pink, my other mohair, I'm going to use this on the folded hems for the underside where you don't even see it. So that'll give me a chance to save some of the mohair if I'm running low on the Puddle Pink. If I'm not running low on the Puddle Pink, I might not bother. But this will just make sure that I will be using the original mohair that I am holding with the tencel yarn for all of the parts of the body and sleeves that you will see, and the ruffle will, it's okay if that stands out because that's a detail to the pattern. So I'm really, really happy with how well this project is progressing. Like I said, I'm working on the ruffle right now. I just kind of wanted to get that done and dusted so that I don't need to worry about it anymore. But I've kind of been going back and forth between working on this one and working on my lento, other than the ruffle right now, because both of them I have just split for sleeves and I'm just knitting straight in the body. The lento, I'm going to wait until I run out of the skein that I'm currently working on and then switch to the sleeves. This one I'm doing the opposite. I'm doing the body first because I really want to make sure that I get a length that I'm happy with for what I intend to wear this pattern with, because I really don't want to have too short of a sweater, especially with one like this that is just such a lovely blouse style sweater, that if I'm running short on my tencel yarn, I have the 2 balls that I'm currently working on held together, and then I have a 3rd ball which I can always split in half and hold together as well, where I'd be okay if my sleeves weren't as long as I would like. So my aim is to have full length or like bracelet length. They are puff sleeves, but they're only slight puff sleeves. So you might be able to notice that there's quite a bit of puff here on the sleeve, and that's because this pattern has puffy sleeves. I have both of my short sleeve options. You can tell that it's a nice puffy sleeve, but the amount that you do just for the upper arm, you just keep going all the way to the bottom, and then you do some decreases and you do a cuff. I'm okay if that cuff can't get all the way to here. If that cuff has to end here or even here, that's okay. I just want to make sure I get the length that I need first, and then I'll worry about how long I can make my sleeves. But honestly, I think I'm going to be a-okay for both the length of the body and the sleeves on this pattern. I don't see myself running out of yarn, knock on wood. Your head is wood, by the way, in case you were wondering why I just knocked my head. Something my family has always done. But I'm feeling pretty confident with my amount of yarn, and I am just so excited to get this one going. I'm not giving myself any deadlines for this one. I started this pattern as part of Laura Penrose's To Me From Me make along, which started in September. I can't remember what date in September, and I think it goes until December 1st, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm definitely not going to finish this by the deadline of that knit along or make along, but I'm okay with that because I've never been the type of person that I get things finished by the end of a deadline for a make along or a knit along. I don't know why. I've just never been able to meet the deadline for a knit along. So I'm okay with that because the purpose is not to finish something by the end. It's to just enjoy the community that is being built during the time of the make-along. And I'm happy that it just kind of got me started on this pattern because I knew this was something that I wanted to make. And I was really excited to have this reason to get it started. And now that it's started, I can pick away at it and I can eventually get it done. I think if I am going to give myself a deadline, I'd like to get this done for spring, because I think this would be so beautiful in the spring, but I would also gladly wear it throughout the winter if it gets done before then. But there we go. I've done all of my whips and we can move on to some stash spotlight yarn. I said this is knit was gonna come up again, and they did! These are the yarns that I purchased on my honeymoon trip that I took at the end of September and beginning of October with my husband. We got married a year ago, but we waited to do our honeymoon until this year, and we went to Portugal via Dublin. And honestly, it was incredible. It was everything we wanted it to be. We had an amazing trip. We saw beautiful things. If you're interested in seeing some of my travel photos, I have them posted on my Instagram, and I have them divided by the different days and the different places, so you can check that out. I did not post while I was away because I'm one of those people that I worry about the security of my home. I don't like to post when I am away from home until I get back because I'm just like that. My parents raised me that way. So I was offline for about 2 weeks, and I struggled to get the algorithm to remember that, oh hey, I'm here, I'm a knitting account. So it was kind of funny, because when I got back from my trip, I wanted to post all my travel photos, but Instagram kind of forgot that I'm a knitting account, and I didn't get a lot of traction on my posts, so I had to divide up the travel pictures with more knitting pictures and knitting reels to remind Instagram, hey, I'm a knitting account, don't forget that I am a knitter, and share my stuff with my followers because they also knit and they'll want to see this. It was just kind of funny. But anyway, all in all, we had a wonderful trip. We saw some beautiful places, and I bought yarn. Of course I bought yarn. I had intended to go to one yarn store in Porto and one yarn store in Dublin. I ended up finding a yarn store. Well, my husband actually found the yarn store in Coimbra, which was super exciting because it was, when I get to that yarn, I'll tell you about it. It was so exciting. But I went to three yarn stores, and then I also found a skein of yarn in a sweater store in Ireland. So that's the yarn that's sticking out on top here. So I'll start with that one. But as we're going through Dublin, my husband really wanted to get another cable knit sweater. He already has 2 that he bought from the Aran sweater market, and he loves the fit of them. He wanted a new one, so we went there and we got him a sweater there. But of course, if you've ever been to Dublin and you're in the touristy areas, you'll know that these sweater stores are a dime a dozen. Anyway, not only do they sell sweaters, some of them sell yarn. So I got this one from the Donegal Wool Spinning Company, and it is 100% Irish wool. This one is spun in Kilcare, County Donegal, Ireland. It is DK weight, I'm pretty sure. It doesn't actually say the weight, but it says that it is 100 grams, roughly 218 meters, and the gauge is 20 stitches to 4 inches when knit with a US 6. So I purchased this color, which I don't think it actually tells me the color, but it is, oh, here it is, shade number 3757. But it's the most gorgeous, deep, foresty green, definitely a bluish green. It seems to be coming up quite nice on the camera. You can see that there's all these incredible flecks. And I'm going to hopefully make myself a pair of mittens out of this yarn. It's a rustic yarn, but it's not horribly uncomfortable. I could put that against my neck. I could put that against my head. It doesn't bother me. It's not itchy at all. I just think I would really love a pair of mittens out of this because I know this would be a really hardy yarn, and I think it could withstand all of the stress that a pair of mittens would get. And I've actually never made a pair of mittens. That's not true. I made a pair of fingerless mittens for my friend when she was living out in Toronto, and then I made the same pair for me, but I did some some wacky shaping to turn them into actual like mittens for me. But I would really love a proper pair of mittens, and I think these would just be really great in this yarn, because this would also be really waterproof because it's a proper wool yarn. So that's one yarn that I bought. Since I first showed you that, let's stick with my Irish yarn purchases. My other ones are from This Is Knit. So I got one of these little drawstring pouches as well as the big tote bag. And I bought some of their house yarn, which is called, funny enough, Townhouse Yarns. And it's not all coming out, but I did get 3 of each of these. I got 3 on their Fade Street 4-ply, which is misleading because in the UK, 4-ply is a size of yarn. It's equal to a fingering. But this is a single ply yarn. And this is the color Smoke and Mirrors, which is very much this like dusty gray purple. I loved it the moment I saw it. And I got the corresponding mohair. This is their Abbey Lace mohair, also in Smoke and Mirrors. And so this is quite a bit darker than the 4-ply. Let's see if I can hold them together. So you do see a bit of a difference, but I thought these will just glow when they're knitted together. And I bought 3 of each because originally I was going to buy 2 of each, knowing that I could get a lento out of that. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, I'm seeing the longevity of my lento that I knit with the equivalent of 2 skeins of fingering, 2 skeins of mohair in my like faded purple version. And it's really not holding up very well, especially under the arms. So I want to knit something on a smaller gauge. So I'll probably do, I love my Dartmoor sweater, but I do wish that one fit a little better. Like I do find that the sleeves are really loose. I wore the heck out of that sweater on our trip though, because that was my one warm knitted item that I brought. I brought a couple of tank tops and everything, but I mainly wore that one like in the Airbnbs at night when it was a little chilly. I wore that one almost every day in Ireland because Portugal and Ireland had very different temperatures while we were there. So it was summer in Portugal, it was fall in Dublin, but I wore that one so much. So I would love to have another dropped shoulder sweater, but that has tapered sleeves, because I know that I will enjoy that much more than those loose sleeves. So I'm going to do some form of a drop shoulder sweater. I did think about the California sweater by Leslie, whose last name I'm forgetting right now. But she and I were on a test knit together years ago, the souffle test knit actually. And she has started designing patterns, which is really exciting. She has the California sweater out right now, and she currently has the Alchemy sweater in testing, which she did a bright red version to look like a Taylor Swift sweater. So maybe I'll do the Alchemy sweater with these. Maybe I'll save something else for the Alchemy sweater because I really love the stitch definition on that. So I don't think I would want to make it in a fuzzy yarn, but something that is dropped shoulder stockinette to really make this yarn shine. So when I was planning our trip, I knew for sure that I was going to visit This Is Knit. And I was thinking to myself, if I only visit that yarn store, I will have been happy with whatever I get to buy on our trip. But I did notice that there are a couple of yarn stores in Portugal. There was one in Lisbon, but it just wasn't close to where we were staying or the things we were going to see, so I didn't get there. But if you want to know more about it, Emily Knits visited that one when she went to Lisbon on her honeymoon, which was literally a week or 2 after we were there. Darn, we could have met up if we were there at the same time. So she went to that one. So if you want to watch her podcast, she talks about visiting that yarn store. But I went to one in Porto, which was called Ovelha Negra, which means black sheep in Portuguese. I really hope my pronunciation was okay. And I bought a couple of yarns there. The first ones that caught my eye were immediately inside the door. And I did not realize at first that they were the house brand of Ovelha Negra because they didn't say that on them. I'm trying to line them up. Here we go. They were on the shelf like this with this Victoria label. But on the back, turn this, there's the Ovelha Negra. So these are 100% Portuguese wool. They are rustic. And I bought 2 of each of these 2 colors, which if I bring them close, oh, it's capturing the color beautifully. Yay! So this is very much a really orangey yellow. It's very golden. And this one is definitely like a pine green. And when I saw these in the store, I just loved the 2 together. And I knew I wanted to try and make something with them. And then I remembered that Laura Penrose is currently working on a design. I think it's on the back burner, so I don't know when it will be out or when it will be testing. But I bought yarn to be ready for when it is because she's making a kite shawl that uses 4 colors. But I thought I could use 2 colors. And you do intarsia up to the halfway point, and then you do, and that's increasing up to the halfway point, and then you continue to do intarsia, decreasing down to the other point. And I thought it'd be really fun to have green on one side, yellow on one side, and then when you get to the halfway point, switch them so that the yellow is on one side and the green is on the other side. So I bought these for that reason. These are fingering weight or sport weight. There's no actual weight given, but I am assuming that they are a fingering base because they have a gauge of 24 to 26 inches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches on a 3.25 to 3.75 millimeter needle. So quite small needles for that size, and they are 100% Portuguese wool. The colors are 8 for the yellow and 18 for the green, 50 grams and 200 meters per ball. So that's what I'm going to make with these, but they are not the only yarns that I bought at Ovelha Negra. We went here before we went to This Is Knit, and I thought it was so funny, the other yarn that I picked out at Ovelha Negra, which just caught my eye because of how pretty it was. But it ended up being an Irish yarn. This is the other yarn that I got at Ovelha Negra, which I'm holding upside down, sorry. It is Life in the Long Grass. And this is their singles base, 100% superwash merino wool, and the color is Virtual. So I got 2 skeins of this, but I'm going to take the label off of one so you can really see how gorgeous these colors are. It just reminded me of a sunset. And the reason why I wanted to get that was one of my favorite memories from our trip was when we arrived in Porto. Our first day walking around, we ended up going to the hill overlooking the river. So you're on the Gaia side of the river. Porto is the city across the river. And that's where everybody goes to watch the sunset. And we were there on a Saturday night. We staked out a spot. We were listening to a cover band play lots of great music. We had just had some delicious food. People were walking around selling beer, wine, cider. So we got a couple of beers. And we were just in the atmosphere. And it was one of my favorite memories from our trip. It really felt like we were on our honeymoon at that point. And it was just so beautiful and so relaxed. And it's just one of my favorite memories from the trip. So I thought, when I saw this and it reminded me of the sunset, I thought, I'm going to get this and I'm going to make something with it. And it's going to remind me of that beautiful moment in our trip and that wonderful memory that I have. So I don't quite know what I'm going to make. I bought 2 because I thought that would be enough for a tank top. And this one, I don't know if I want to hold the yarn single or double. If I hold it single, I can get something bigger out of it and I have more pattern options. If I hold it double, I can really only make like a cropped tank top. I could definitely do something like this, but I would have to have it much shorter. But I don't know if I want to do that. I thought I would want that because that would really blend the colors well together. But I think this one, I'm not going to know what I want to do until I swatch for it and I see how the yarn wants to play. I have one more yarn to share with you, and this one has such a fun story to it. So when I organized our trip to Portugal, I'm the planner in our family. I'm a library technician. Research is my job. So I go hog wild when it comes to planning trips and everything. And I had seen in a book the photo of the Joanina Library at the University of Coimbra in Coimbra, Portugal. And my eyes just went bug-eyed looking at the photos of this museum, of this library, because it was so beautiful. And I planned our trip so that we would have one night in Coimbra, simply so that we could go visit this library. I literally planned part of our trip around visiting a library. I also planned part of our Porto trip to visit a bookstore, so that's just what I am. But we visited the Joanina Library, which is the absolute highlight of the trip for me. You were not allowed to take photos inside, otherwise I definitely would have shared photos, but I will include a link below to the website so that you can see it for yourself. But this library was so beautiful. I burst into tears as we walked inside, and even thinking about it now, it still kind of makes me tear up because of how impressive it was. The ceilings are so high. There's books from the ceiling to the floor. All the woodwork is expertly carved. There's paintings on the ceiling. It is a true Baroque library. And in fact, we were thinking as we were walking through, this looks like the Beauty and the Beast library come to life. And Doyle actually looked it up afterwards. This library specifically inspired the live-action Beauty and the Beast library in the Disney movie. I was just not at all surprised to find that out. But I was also thinking, they don't say specifically that it inspired the animated version, but looking around, to me it felt like the animated version come to life. So to me it also felt very much like it inspired that one as well. And it was like my childhood dream come to life, because any book girly knows when it comes to Beauty and the Beast, you don't want the prince, you want the library. So that was why we went to Coimbra. And after we went to see the library and saw some of the other sites that were on our list, we were just walking down the main drag in town, checking out some of the stores, the restaurants, the cafes. And Doyle noticed a yarn store. And when we went inside, they had signs everywhere saying 70% off. And I got some yarn. I bought enough to make a t-shirt. It is if I remember correctly, it's a viscose nylon blend. So it's not the fanciest fiber or anything, but it's sparkly. This yarn, I have 400 grams of this yarn. Each skein is 100 grams. I forget what the amount is. It is somewhere between a sport and a light DK. So this one is one that I will have to do a swatch to find out what I can make with it gauge-wise, and then look at patterns based on the gauge. But it's so pretty. I had to buy it. But I did not pay very much for it. So they had a sign saying 70% off. And I thought to myself, I just want to get enough that I know I could make a garment with. And I went up to the register to pay for this. They measured it all out. She helped me find as many of the ones that were this color as possible, because there was another one that was very similar but not exactly the same. But she helped me pick out all the ones that were this color. And they didn't speak a lot of English in this town because it's more off the beaten path. They pretty much only speak Portuguese with a little bit of English. We never had a problem communicating, so that was okay. But when she rang it up and she told me €5.70, I said, I'm sorry, what? What? Because I honestly thought that I was misunderstanding her when she said how much it was. And then she showed it to me on the screen and I was like, okay. I gave her €6 and she gave me change for this much yarn. I feel like she should not have given me change. She should have just kept that because it was so cheap. I couldn't believe it. But I just thought that was so incredible. It was such a funny story. And I would only have gotten this really fun, cheap yarn if Doyle had spotted that yarn store. And he did. Good for me. So this concludes my Stash Spotlight series, showing off my yarns that I bought on our honeymoon. Okay, I know it's been going on for a long time, but I'm going to speed through my book reviews. I only have 2. I've actually read about 5 or 6 books since my last podcast episode, but I really wanted to talk to you about these ones because I really liked these ones. I gave 5 stars to each of them, but they are very different books from each other. The first one is Dirty Laundry. This one is by Richard Pink and Roxanne Emery. They are the couple behind the TikTok account ADHD Love, and I read this book because I wanted to better understand people that have ADHD. My husband, Doyle, has ADHD, and I wanted to read this book to get a better understanding of some of the traits that he has and how I can best support him. And this book was actually recommended by Laura Penrose. She recommended it to me ages ago, but I only just got around to getting it from the library because originally I was on hold for it, and the last time that it was available for me to pick up, I was not able to get to the library to pick it up, so I had to put it on hold again. But I did just come in October. So I read this one recently. I loved this book. It's really quick. It's really short. I honestly could have read it in a single sitting. And I loved it. There were so many great stories that they told about how they deal with and support Roxanne's ADHD. And I love that it showed not just how they work with the negative side of ADHD and the things that she struggles with. It also talked about some of the beautiful things about ADHD and how Roxanne is incredibly creative and she has beautiful ways of interacting with the world through her ADHD. So not only was it this really great sort of manual for, hey, if your partner who has ADHD is doing this, this is how you can help them. Definitely don't react this way. There were also moments in the book where it said, these are some of the things that Roxanne does that she would not do if she didn't have ADHD, and look how beautiful her life is. So I really, really loved that about this book. So if you are someone with ADHD or if you know somebody who has ADHD, I think this is a beautiful little book to read. And my next book review is Phantasma. I got this in my book of the month for October. It was definitely a spooky read. It was a great choice for that month, and I loved this book. This one definitely hit all those spooky notes, but it also hit all of those spicy notes because it's a very interesting blend of spooky, a little bit of violence, a little bit of scary stuff, but also there is a romance in it. And I am not a gamer, so I don't really know this. I only know a little bit about it. But if you are a Baldur's Gate 3 fan and you love Astarion, the main male love interest in this book is essentially Astarion. And I only know a little bit about him from like memes and stuff like that, and a little bit of like watching Doyle play, but that one's not one that I can really watch him play so much because it's more of like an individual one on the computer. It's not one that he puts up on the TV. So I only know a little bit about Astarion, but I know that he's really sexy and really funny and just charming. So charming. But essentially the main male character in this one, Blackwell, I think it's Blackwell or Blackwood. I think it's Blackwell. He's essentially a very Astarion-like character. The main character, Ophelia, is someone who struggles with OCD. And in this book, her OCD is also, she calls it the shadow voice in her head. And it's really interesting to see how the book portrays OCD coming to life, because Phantasma is this basically manor house that magically appears in different cities, and people can come into Phantasma and compete for the Devil's Prize, which is essentially anything they want. And in this book, Ophi's OCD, her shadow voice, comes to life in the manor because it brings your fears to life. So many interesting elements to this. If you are also a fan of Dante and his book, The Inferno, part of the Divine Comedy, this is essentially a modern version of that. There are 9 levels to the competition in Phantasma, and they are all related to different sins. It is brilliant. But I also loved how it seamlessly works in the romance and the spice, and like, it works. It just really, really works. It's, to me, this works better than the Hunger Games when it comes to mixing a challenge, like a very difficult challenge against other people, with a romance. Because let's be honest, the Hunger Games romance didn't really work, either one of them. But this one I find really, really works. And I don't want to give too much away because it is so incredible, especially as you learn more about what brought Ophelia to Phantasma, how that relates to other elements of the story, how different characters change and become different. But it's just really, really good. The only thing that I didn't love about this book was that you're not told when the book takes place, like what the setting is, other than it's New Orleans, and you kind of figured that it's like turn of the century New Orleans based on how they describe the clothing and the fact that people are going around in horse and buggies, like carriages, there's no cars. The way that people live their lives kind of sounds like it's around that time, Edwardian time, but they use modern language, and particularly Ophelia's sister uses a lot of swear words. Ophelia starts to swear a bit more in the book too. It makes more sense once they get to Phantasma and you kind of like put aside the fact that like this could be set in the Edwardian period and you're just in a fantasy period where it could be anything. But I found that it was a little jarring at the beginning of the book where it's kind of making you feel that you're in this historical time period, but they're using really modern language. So that was really the only thing that I kind of struggled with. And I found that I struggled reading Ophelia's OCD at the beginning of the book, but once she got into Phantasma and it became more of a corporeal thing, I enjoyed that much more. So that is my review of Phantasma. And with that, we are at the end of the podcast. It has been a long journey to get here. If you are still here, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sticking around to the very end. If you are new here, thank you so much for joining me. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. While you're here, it would help my channel if you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave me a comment below. Tell me something you liked about the podcast, something that you're excited about me working on. Maybe you liked one of the yarns that I showed off. Maybe you've also read either of the books that I recommended. But please leave me a comment below. I would really love to hear what you think. If you'd like to give me a tip, I always include a link to my Ravelry wish list in the description box of this video. If you'd like to give me a little tip, you could buy me a pattern from my wish list. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I hope you all take care and happy knitting!